Please welcome to the stage David Harris from the NEEP Board of Trustees.
Good evening, everyone. As noted, my name is David Harris, and I want to welcome you all to the 5th annual Voices of the Innocent event. And it is truly a special night. Tonight, we will hear from 3 storytellers, 3 people who have been directly impacted by wrongful convictions. And it is against all odds that they are here with us today. 2 have endured over 3 decades of wrongful incarceration to be here, and 1 has endured her father's wrongful incarceration for that same length of time. Thank you back there. Like all people who have experienced a wrongful conviction, they faced significant resistance from the legal system and suffered many losses before they saw freedom. They will share with us just a little bit of their stories with you. A moment in time that was meaningful or stayed with them, or it's just a reflection. And while these stories are personal, they contain truths with which all of us must contend and that can inform our work and our lives. For me, personally, it is learning from people wrongfully convicted and supporting efforts to make transformative changes in the criminal legal system that led me to become a trustee of the New England Innocence Project. And I'm thrilled to see so many people here today who also are supporting this work. I want to start by acknowledging the many people in this room who have themselves been impacted by wrongful convictions. They are formerly incarcerated or have been representing their loved ones who have passed away or who are still fighting for their freedom. Collectively, they have experienced nearly 900 years of incarceration. And that's just the people in this room. It's a difficult thing to stomach and can feel simply overwhelming. But then to see everyone here at this event is fantastic. Can I just ask everyone who was wrongfully convicted or who is here representing a loved one who was wrongfully convicted to stand up and stay standing? Just seeing all of you gives me hope. And it gives us direction. It is the reason why we are all here today. To make it possible to bring more people home who will be with us in this room next year. Thank you for being here, and I invite you to sit down and take your seats, which you've done. Thank you. I also want to acknowledge some of the people and organizations that have generously sponsored this event so that the work of the New England Innocence Project and the Exoneree Network to fight alongside people for their freedom and to support them when they are free can continue. Doing this work is difficult. It takes a long time and requires significant resources. Each of the sponsors for this event is sustaining this work into the future, helping to reunite people with their loved ones and helping to prevent these injustices from continuing. Thank you to them. I want to take a moment now to acknowledge 2 people who were here for the inaugural Voices of the Innocent event in 2019, and who we lost soon after. Supreme Court Chief Justice Ralph Gantz and exoneree Bobby Jo Leister. They sat near the front row next to each other, an aisle in between them. Their lives had been so different, and yet they shared so much. Retired Judge Christopher Muse, who is here tonight, captured it best when he said, Bobby Joe Leister and Ralph Gantz were two of the giants of the social justice movement, and one did it with his voice on the streets, the other did it in the courtroom with his writing. The messages were the same. Like Chief Justice Gantz and Bobby Joe Leister, we all chose to be here tonight because we recognize that it takes all of us, a community, a movement, to create the kind of change that is truly needed in the criminal legal system. As Charles Hamilton Houston said, we must remain on the alert and push the struggle further with all our might. So, on behalf of everyone at the New England Innocence Project, I would like to thank you for investing in this important work. And now I'd like to ask the the tireless, and sometimes tired, visionary leader, executive director of the New England Innocence Project, Radha Natarajan, to come up.
Thank you, David, for being here. God bless you. And opening up this event with such powerful words. And good evening, everyone. It is incredible to see you here in this space. You've already had a chance to meet one of the wonderful New England Innocence Project trustees, but I want to take a moment to recognize all the trustees who are here tonight. Chair David Siegel, who you will hear from a little later tonight, Cheryl Schaefer, Robert Foxworth, Daniel Medwed, Lisa Kavanaugh, David Meyer, and Erica Barber. In addition, I want to acknowledge members of our Development Advisory Board, Ann Harvey Kilburn, Jason Weiner, and Gail Roberts. Could you all please stand? On behalf of everyone at the New England Innocence Project, thank you for volunteering your time, your guidance, and your incredible commitment to this work. Our community counts on us, and we count on you. Thank you. And now, without further ado, it's time to start the storytelling portion of this event. Tonight, our three storytellers are opening their hearts to you. They're sharing things that would be difficult under any circumstance, but perhaps even more so in a room full of strangers. Fortunately, I know that this is a warm audience, an audience filled with people who are kind and patient and who are looking to soak in all that may be shared tonight. And for that, we are incredibly grateful. It is my distinct privilege to introduce you to our first storyteller, Jabir Pope. Jabir was wrongfully convicted of a Boston murder and spent 38 years in prison for a crime he did not commit. Though he was freed in 2021 and had all charges last year dropped against him, he has yet to be compensated by the Commonwealth for all that he lost while he was wrongfully imprisoned. He is a talented musician, a proud father and grandfather. Let's give him an enthusiastic welcome.
It was May of 2013, the week of Mother's Day. And I did what I usually had done for the 29 years that preceded it. I ordered a card, mailed it home, and timed it so that it would arrive on Saturday, the day before Mother's Day. On the morning of Mother's Day, first of all, I did it this way. not because I lived out of state or out of the country, but because 29 years earlier, I was wrongly convicted and sentenced to die in prison. I went and came down on Mother's Day morning along with a host of other prisoners and found our place in the line waiting for the phone so that we could call our loved ones. When I called, one of my sisters answered the phone and said to me, "Mom's is in the hospital. They found cancer, and she's not expected to live through the night." Whoa. What, wait? What are you talking about? She said, "All of us are on our way down to the hospital to say our goodbyes, and I'm suggesting that you call down to the hospital and say your goodbyes as well. If you do, I'll talk to you when you call." Click. That left me in the lurch. Now, you should understand that prison is a place that has a lot of bureaucracy and a lot of rules, some of which are legitimate and some are just nonsense. Among the rules that we have is that we have a list of 10 phone numbers that we can put on our phone list. And if you want to call a number beyond that list, then you have to get approval from the higher-ups. With this, I went to my block officer, explained my situation, and asked him to notify the shift commander to facilitate a call, and he did so. He came back to me and he said to me that the shift commander informed him that authorizing such a call was above his pay grade and that he would have to notify the deputy at home, and he was reluctant to do so, and asked if I had access to a three-way, which is also against the rules. This angered me, but so as not to take it out on my block officer who did his job, I simply said to him, "I'm going for a walk," and I headed for the yard. As I walked the yard, I reflected on what my options were. Now, I could make an attempt to do a three-way and have that shut down immediately and be taken to solitary for the effort. You see, because prison is full of insignificant rules like that. One could go to solitary for not being standing while an officer was taking account. One could go to solitary and lose his visiting privileges for something as innocent and as simple as giving his children a piggyback on a visit. So I knew what I was up against. The second thing is I could attempt to make a three-way call and have the call disrupted and shut down in the middle of a conversation, which would have turned into something real ugly real quick. The third option was not to even make an attempt at all, which was not an option. And while I was reflecting, I was interrupted by a page over the intercom directing me to report to the captain's office. When I arrived, the captain said to me, "We have been in touch with the hospital, and we have determined that you have been telling the truth," as if I would lie about something as important as that. That insulted me. And that was compounded by the fact that I had been in prison for something that I didn't do based on some lies. I knew that if I dealt with it in the way that I wanted to, I would have never been able to make the call, and making the call that day was paramount. And so I ate it, and I choked on it. They put me through to the hospital, and my sister answered the phone and placed it to my mother's ear, which presented me with yet another challenge, because I did not know if she knew what her prognosis was. So I had to tailor my comments and my wording to her in order to say goodbye and tell her I love her without alerting her to the fact that death was imminent. During the call, my sister took the receiver and said to me, "Are you finished talking with her? Because we want you to talk to her some more, because she seemed to be responsive to your voice." And so I did. After the call, I returned to my unit where my block officer was waiting for me and asked me if I wanted to speak to a counselor or clergy to assist me with my grief. And I told him no, all I needed was some quiet time to myself. I went to my cell, sat on my bunk, and reflected about the call that I just made. And that reminded me of another important call that I had to make years earlier. You see, my mother was a working mother and was only able to attend a portion of my trial. When they convicted me and sentenced me to forever, on the way to the penitentiary, I was filled with the anxiety of how I was going to break this to my mother and what it would do to her. I got to the penitentiary and finally got up the courage to go to the phone and call my mom's. And when she answered the phone, I simply said to her, "There's no other way to say it. They gave me forever today." God bless her, she didn't blink. She said, "Son, are you still alive?" And I said, "Yes, ma'am." She said, "The fight there ain't over then." That lifted a burden off of me. That gave me the strength and the focus that I needed to fight the fight that was ahead of me. It would be 38 years before I won my freedom with the help of my fantastic attorney, Mr. Jeff Harris, who's in the house tonight. My mother passed that night, before that night was over. And that left a hole in my soul, a hole that is beginning to be filled with my freedom, my reconnection to my daughter, and the meeting of my beloved grandson. What are the odds, huh? Love you, moms.
Dear mama, sorry that you passed this way. Today ain't my day. For tomorrow I pray. Oh, I pray. Dear mama, sorry that you passed this way. Today ain't my day. For tomorrow I pray.
Thank you, Jabir. Jabir, your love for your mom and the inspiration that she gave you to fight all those years, it's so clear from your story and from the special song. For those who don't know, that was an original song performed by Jabir and another exoneree who is in the audience today, Albert Brown. And it's called Dear Mama. Losing a parent or any loved one is very difficult, no matter when it happens. But enduring that grief in prison, alone, without the support of family, and without being able to say goodbye, is the devastating grief that so many incarcerated people face. When a person is wrongfully convicted, they lose their freedom, but they lose so much more than that. It is sometimes easy to overlook all that a person has faced when you see that iconic moment of someone walking out of the courthouse triumphantly. The image you have might be of that day, but before that day, there were so many others behind the wall. And that's why I appreciate our next storyteller so much, because she's going to share with you just one day out of her decades of wrongful imprisonment. I am honored to introduce you to Nancy Wagner. Nancy was wrongfully convicted of the murder of her beloved daughter, Sarah. Nancy spent 30 years in prison before she was able to demonstrate through scientific evidence that Sarah's death was a tragic accident. In this way, Nancy's wrongful conviction was actually very similar to that of so many other wrongfully convicted women who were convicted of harming their children when no crime, in fact, had occurred. Nancy was freed in 2020, and her conviction was overturned this year. Rather than face another trial where she would have to trust a system that had failed her, Nancy chose closure through what's called an Alford plea, ending the case while still maintaining her innocence. Speaking tonight is not easy for Nancy. She does not seek attention, and she does not relish the spotlight. But her experience is so important for us to hear, and I am grateful that she is willing to share it. So please, help me welcome Nancy Wagner to the stage.
Hi. I was in my cell, hi Ange, in Framingham Prison with my dog Cappy, a beautiful black lab. I was part of the NEEDS program that trained service dogs for disabled people. And I was chosen because I stayed out of trouble and I minded my business. When a CO came to my door and told me I had to go with him and that I couldn't take my dog with me. So I gave my dog to my next door neighbor and he walked me down to admissions, which is where you come to prison or where you leave prison. He locked me in the cell and walked away. I had no idea what was going on. I was there for first couple hours, I was quiet, and then I started banging on the door, and they wouldn't even look at me. They totally ignored me. And they brought my roommate down and put her in the cell next to me, and we started talking, and all of a sudden they started yelling that we couldn't say anything to each other, so they moved her 3 cells down. So at this point, I'm terrified. I have no idea what's going on. And they have what's called inmate runners, where inmates work in different parts of the prison. And so an inmate runner came down, and when the COs weren't looking, she told me, they're tearing apart your cell. Your stuff's thrown out in the hallway. There's a CO sitting in front of your door taking notes on whoever's going in and out of your room. And I was petrified. I reached a point where I thought they were shipping me out to another state. And I was scared I would never see my family, my friends, my dog. And after 4 or 5 hours, I accepted it. I wasn't getting any answers. And I actually wanted to go, to get out of that cell. So at 5 hours, they opened my cell door and told me to go back to my unit. And I was in shock. I went back to my unit. I looked in the hallway, and all my stuff's thrown in the hallway, all my clothes. And I go in my room, the ceiling's ripped down, pages are torn out of my address book, my books, my cosmetics spilled all over the place. It was a disaster. Everything I owned was basically destroyed. So I started putting everything back together, and I noticed that chain that my sister had gotten me years ago was missing. I went to the CO and told him, and he told me that it was in property, to go to property to get it. So I walked to property, I get my necklace, and I was so upset I was crying. I just didn't understand why they did this to me. This wasn't a normal cell toss. I decided to go to the DOS's office, which is the Director of Security, and ask him why. So I walked to his office, knocked on the door, he told me I could come in, and it's a huge office, wall-to-wall rug, big desk, and I asked him, why did you tear apart my cell like that? And he told me that it was a drill, that the COs didn't even know it was a drill, they thought it was real. The only ones that did were the ones down at Missions, and they were told to just act like I wasn't there. And he apologized to me. And I was still so upset that everything I owned, everything, it was just terrifying. And he apologized to me. And that was the only apology I've ever gotten. 5 years later, I walked out of that same cell, and I always remember that day. The lack of control, lack of power I had. And that's why today I'm so grateful that I can go to the store and buy what I want. I can live where I want to live. And I can simply just walk down the street if I want to. That's it.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you for painting a picture of that day for us. It helps all of us have a more complex understanding of what that time was like, because when that happened to Nancy, she had been in that cell for 25 years, and that had become her home. And in fact, on that day, when Nancy was taken out of her cell and everything she owned was tossed aside and destroyed, she had been in that home longer than any other home. And wherever we can make our home, that is a sacred space to each of us, so we can see why the harm and the fear that she felt that day has stayed with her all these years later. And she endured that trauma because of a training exercise, a drill, not because she had done anything wrong. Nancy's story teaches us urgency. We feel the urgent need to get people out of prison because anything can happen in just one day. And Nancy's days in prison have now been replaced with thrilling days in freedom. Since Nancy has been free, she has thrived and contributed to her community, and she's even married her love, Ray. She has overcome so much just to be here tonight, and she's not the only one. I'm excited to turn now to our last storyteller of the night, Yesenia Valentin. Yesenia is a community activist who is a fierce advocate for her family. She has been a single, determined mother since the age of 20. She was separated from her father because of his wrongful conviction, and she has fought for her parents both in the medical and judicial systems. There's so much that she hopes to do to create change for underrepresented communities. And I think that when you hear her, you will agree that she is unstoppable.
It's the 4th of July. I worked 14 hours straight. Exhausted, I plopped on the couch. My son walks in with a basketball in his hand. He sits across from me with a sad look on his face. I asked what's wrong, and he mumbled nothing while avoiding eye contact. I asked him why he's not outside playing basketball with his friends. And he said to me, because I can't tell the difference between the fireworks and the gunshots. That broke me. I failed my son. I failed as a mother. How could I let this happen? My choices were robbing my son of his childhood, just as I had been robbed of mine. I was 11 years old. I came home from school and I was waiting on the front stoop for my mom. As the afternoon turned into the evening, the neighborhood kids began making fun of me and teasing. That's why the police took your mama. And yeah, she not coming back. While I yelled, shut up and stop lying, they replied, we not lying, but you can sit on the stoop all night looking stupid. That's why you ain't got no mama no more. That day, my mother went to jail for 5 years for selling drugs to support her family. My father was already incarcerated for a crime he did not commit. And for the next 5 years, I was homeless, couch surfing between family members, friends, strangers, and park benches. And even when my mother did come home, I'm 15 years old, I'm thinking everything's gonna get better. But her homecoming had its own complications. In and out of family shelters, still couch surfing between family members and friends, cleaning bathrooms to pay rent for a boarding room. And then my mother was diagnosed with lupus. A single mother with a record who couldn't work further complicated life. But she worked hard to regain her rights to take us to visit my dad. All my life, everyone told me he was innocent. And every Saturday, we would go visit this innocent, caring man who I knew didn't deserve to be there. And everyone seemed like life was too busy to make it a priority. So I decided, who better to help him fight for his journey to freedom than his child? But who would listen to me, a 17-year-old kid who didn't even have the rights to vote? So I wrote a letter to the President of the United States requesting clemency. I wrote celebrities, I wrote talk show hosts, but no one responded. But no matter how difficult my situation became, I could not give up. A year after my mom went to jail, I was 12 years old, completely alone, sitting on a park bench with nowhere to go. I couldn't stop crying. I felt completely empty, my heart ached, and I felt like the most unloved child in the world. I laid on that bench staring at those stars. And at that moment, I decided that this was not going to be my life, and that no matter what I had to do, I was going to one day become a homeowner. And I wasn't going to do it by selling drugs or gangbanging, because all the drug dealers I knew were in jail with their families suffering, and the gangbangers were killing each other off. You see, by the time my mom came home, we were still homeless. And sitting on that couch, remembering that promise, I couldn't let this continue. I had to do something more than just work. That night, my defeat turned into anger. By morning, I was determined. And I knew this wasn't going to be easy, but I realized that I had the power to change this, that this did not have to be my reality. And so I started working day and night. I worked through pain, hunger, and exhaustion. I started looking for resources that can help me improve my credit score. I started looking into all these employers I was working for and what they had to offer. A free first-time homebuyers course, a 401k that I could borrow for myself. I became fiercely disciplined with my finances and sacrificed time with my son. I assured him that I was doing this so that we can become homeowners. And we talked about having our dream house and him having his own room. All the while, still saving money for a lawyer for my dad, still fighting and advocating for my mother's health, and doing fundraisers. 5 years later, I was finally able to begin my house hunting. A year into my searching, I felt this goal slowly slipping away again. COVID shut everything down. The interest rates more than tripled. My car was totaled, and my father's case became increasingly complicated. And I fell into a great depression that I could not mask. But with my depression on full display, I showed up to open houses, looking crazy. I slept in parking lots in between open houses. My best friend decided that she wasn't gonna allow me to give up, and she worked my house hunting in between her work schedule and lent me her car. But none of these houses were suitable. And right when I was about to give up, I saw a listing. Open house was gonna close in 10 minutes. I put it in my GPS. I got there in 9 minutes. And as I walked through the house, I sat in the kitchen and I envisioned my family cooking Thanksgiving dinner there. I thanked the real estate agent. I walked to my friend's car. I called my agent and I made an offer. In November of 2022, I closed on my house. Congratulations. 8 months later, my father was granted parole with a home release plan to my house. I am blessed to be a homeowner and to be able to live with both my son and my dad. My mother's health is thriving, but the most gratification is watching my son enjoy his own room and be able to play basketball outside safely.
Wow. Thank you so much, Yesenia. You embody what it means to succeed against all odds. In addition to learning from your strength and perseverance, it is so important for all of us to remember that no single person suffers the impact of a wrongful incarceration. When someone is wrongfully convicted, it impacts their children, their parents, their spouses, and their communities. The impact of wrongful convictions spans generations, and that is why it is so critical that we fight them with everything that we have. Tonight, we are here to ask you to join us in that fight. The work to correct just one wrongful conviction spans years and involves significant resources. That's because after someone is convicted, even if that conviction is based on lies or faulty evidence or came about because of official misconduct, the system prioritizes finality over justice. There are so many legal obstacles to getting back into court, and if you try once and you're unsuccessful, then it becomes that much harder the next time you try. When I joined the New England Innocence Project as a staff attorney in 2015, I had already been a public defender for 12 years. I thought I understood a lot about how the criminal legal system worked, but overturning a wrongful conviction involves some of the most complex litigation that there is, often involving boxes and boxes of discovery, of paper, multiple experts, scientific testing, investigators to speak to witnesses who are now all over the world, and fierce resistance in court. My very first case was that of Tommy Rosa. He had already been tried 3 times and convicted twice. He lost his appeals and was unsuccessful trying to overturn his conviction the first time, even with DNA evidence. It is a daunting task to pursue a case with that history, but that's exactly what the New England Innocence Project does. Our fight for Mr. Rosa, which included a key partnership with the Boston College Innocence Program, multiple DNA experts, multiple rounds of testing, an eyewitness identification expert, and an investigation team, spanned all this time, the last 7 years. And every resource put into this case was worth it. Because last week, Mr. Rosa's conviction was finally overturned. After being wrongfully imprisoned for 34 years for a crime he did not commit, he sits here today with his wife, Virginia, and with this incredible community. And I think we should take another moment to applaud this victory against all odds. Unfortunately, Mr. Rosa's fight is actually not over. The Suffolk County District Attorney's Office has not decided if they will retry Mr. Rosa for a 4th time. But wherever this case goes, Mr. Rosa will not be alone. We will be with him and his family every step of the way, and we hope that you will be with us too. And that's not just for Mr. Rosa, but for every person who writes to us from prison and wants us to review their case, for every person whose mother or father is still incarcerated on false allegations, and for every person released from long-term incarceration and needs support navigating a new world. It's not that often that we can hear about something that we want to change, and then we have an opportunity to actually do something about it. But tonight is that opportunity, because tonight you can directly support this life-changing work. Now, I know you don't need any more incentive than increased justice and freedom here in New England, but we want to offer a little something. With a gift of $500 or more tonight, or a monthly donation of $50 or more, you will automatically be entered to win one of two gifts: a wine tasting and lunch for 6 people at Churro Vineyard. Churro Vineyard has been a tremendous partner to the New England Innocence Project for many years, and we're excited that one of you will be able to enjoy this great prize along with 5 of your friends or loved ones. You will also have the opportunity to receive a framed print of your choice from a revolutionary press. These inspirational prints include original artwork and quotes and images inspired by the exoneree community. Artists carved images, original images, on linoleum blocks and printed them with a press on handmade paper from the Peace Papers Project. And they are hopeful reminders of how we can all persevere against the odds. And now, I want to play a video message from Brad Stevens of the Celtics, who could not be here tonight, but he wanted to share his thoughts on funding this important mission. So let's hear what he has to say.
Hi, everybody. This is Brad Stevens from the Boston Celtics. I was honored to be asked to say a few words here tonight on video. I wish I could be there. I'm traveling tonight. I've got a lot of appreciation and admiration for what the Innocence Project means, not only in New England, but across the country. When I first heard of the Innocence Project, it was from one of my college teammates who had just finished law school, and he went to work in New York and told me all about the work that he was doing and all of the people that he was working for that had been wrongfully convicted or errors had been made, to give them hope, to bring them back home. I can't say enough great things about what I've learned about the different chapters across the United States, and specifically the New England chapter. Thank you for all that you're doing to help provide that hope and help not only people get freed, exonerated, but then also rebuild their lives once they come back. Congratulations to Andrew Ryan with the Boston Globe, with all of the great work that you've done on being tonight's recipient of the award. And again, I hope that all of you that are there tonight will join Tracy and I in donating to make sure that we do our part to help wrongfully convicted people be exonerated, give their hope, and get back their freedom.
I don't know, can you?
I heard Nat in the house. How you doing, Nat?
Hollywood.
Can I take a second, Rada? There are people in the exoneree community that care so deeply about this work. And I know one of them personally that sold $70 and 40-something cents, right, worth of T-shirts, right, to be able to help to fund this work. There was an exoneree, somebody who was freed but fighting, sold some T-shirts to help fund this work. And then the rest of this community rallied together. We came around, we rallied together, and we were able to call on other people. We were able to dig deep in some of our pockets, and we were able to come up with $5,072 to help support this work. We know how important this work is because we were once incarcerated as innocent men and women. Men and women. We know how important this work is, and this is why we take on the responsibility, having once been wrongfully convicted, to help to support this work. And so tonight, I ask you to help us, help this organization to do this work. Because this work saves lives. If you want to save a life, support this work. Thank you. Thank you.
I hope it's not cash.
No, it's not bad.
Wow. Thank you, Sean, and thank you to so many of you in this room. I have an idea of who is selling the t-shirts. Just a little guess. We're just so grateful, and I'm not supposed to be speechless, so I'm going to try to keep going. Now that the lights are up, I want to ask all of you to take out on your chairs when you came in. There was a donation card and there were pens, and I'm going to ask you to consider the importance of this work and what does it mean for it to continue and for it to grow. It's grown a lot since the last time we were here, but it needs to grow even more. Whether it's freeing people from prison, preventing wrongful convictions in the future, or supporting people after release, your gift can change lives. When you open your donation card at the top, you'll have the opportunity to commit your support to our work by providing your contact information and signing up for our email list. And at the bottom, you have the opportunity to make freedom possible with a financial contribution. You can even sign up to be a monthly recurring donor to sustain this work into the future. So take the time to think about the most meaningful gift that you can give tonight to correct and prevent wrongful convictions and support people, some of those people in this room with you right now. Think about how important it is to bring hope to people in prison, to bring them home to be with their loved ones before it's too late. Once you have done that and filled out your card, there will be people collecting them from you. We are so grateful for everything you do and for your presence here tonight. From the staff, the trustees, and all of our current and future clients, we thank you. And next, we will have the presentation of the Arc of Justice Award, but we want to give you some time to think about this important mission. Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage Board Chair David Siegel.
As I said, my name is David Siegel, and I'm a founding trustee of the New England Innocence Project. I currently chair its Board of Trustees, which is why I'll remind you again about the importance of these cards. And it's my privilege tonight to introduce the Arc of Justice Award. So, those of you who need to get to the bar, go ahead, and then come back and sit down so you can hear our presentation. The Arc of Justice Award recognizes the special contribution of a community member who bends the arc of the moral universe toward justice. The principle behind this award is that the arc only bends when people pull it. It doesn't bend on its own. And since this is the first time we've been together since 2019 for this event, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the people in this room who have previously received the Arc of Justice or the Marching Toward Freedom Award. So please give me your attention for these very, very important individuals. They include the Sifazari team from Ropes and Gray, including Yana Grishkin, the legal and investigative teams who represented Keon Sprinkle, including Goodwin, the legal and investigative teams who represented James Watson, including attorney Barbara Monroe, the Wright team from Skadden, including Nigel Tampton, and social service advocate Kristen Dame. So, I know some of you are here this evening, and it would be great if you could stand so we could recognize all of you for your many contributions. Thank you so much. And at tonight's event, as we focus on all of the people, all that people must overcome to achieve their freedom and thrive in a new world, we wanted to recognize someone who shined a light on wrongful convictions in Massachusetts. So Andrew Ryan is a skilled journalist whose detailed and thorough reporting has authentically captured the difficult and beautiful experiences of people directly impacted by wrongful convictions. Over the last few years, Andrew Ryan's research and reporting has portrayed the journeys of several people attempting to overturn their convictions and the community of wrongfully convicted people who support each other in freedom. Andrew has been present for significant moments in this community, including releases, exonerations, and even the largest gathering of wrongfully convicted people at the Innocence Network Conference in Phoenix, Arizona. Essential to this work is the trust Andrew Ryan has built with members of this community. Many wrongfully convicted people have felt betrayed by the media, viewing it as playing a key role in cementing biased or uncritical and ultimately erroneous narratives of people charged and convicted of crimes. In contrast, Andrew Ryan has demonstrated extremely careful and detailed reporting, asking the hard questions, and in so doing has helped us all better understand complex issues. As a result, he has gained the trust of Ray Champagne, an exoneree and beloved member of the community who we lost too soon. Andrew even succeeded in capturing the depth of Ray's character and accomplishments in his obituary, not an easy feat. Many injustices in the criminal legal system happen behind closed doors. In decision-making by investigators, prosecutors, defense lawyers, and even judges, Andrew Ryan makes it possible for us to better see what would otherwise remain hidden. It is my privilege to ask Andrew Ryan to join me on the stage to receive the New England Innocence Project's 2023 Arc of Justice Award.
Thank you, David, for that kind introduction. I'm humbled to be on this stage and be recognized with this award. It's really something. I'll be honest, looking around this room, I feel a bit like an imposter. The arc of justice is a weighty phrase. And when I think about it, I'm looking at the people who do the hard work, the heavy lifting. The hard work is done by the attorneys, the paralegals, the secretaries, and the investigators. As you all know, the system doesn't relent. It doesn't let go. And so you have to stick with it for years, pushing through setbacks and dead ends. And of course, The people who do the most work are the exonerees themselves. They sometimes alone, are the ones who believe. They don't give up despite the astronomical odds. And they rally others to their cases, which is no small thing, because it can be hard to get anyone to listen. I know about that firsthand. When I first started at the Globe almost 20 years ago, I was the newspaper's first online reporter. My job was to write stories immediately as they happened. It meant a constant deadline. I'd pump out 6, 8, 10 stories a day. One day, I got a break, and I went to write a feature story at the Old Colony Correctional Facility about an effort by a group of inmates. They're called Voices from Behind the Wall. These were men serving life or long-term sentences. They had produced a video offering advice to young men in their old neighborhoods, urging them to stay out of trouble. When I met the man who spearheaded Voices from Behind the Wall, he didn't want to talk about the video. He wanted to talk about his case. He told me he didn't do it. He was wrongly convicted and serving life. I remember he was clutching a handful of green certified mail receipts. He'd sent letters outlining his story, his truth, to every place he could think of: the governor, the state attorney general, prosecutors, and more. No one would listen. And now this man was trying to get me to listen. So I went back to my newsroom and I tried. I called his lawyer and I tried to look into his case. But I still had those 6 or 8 or 10 stories to write, and I wasn't on the Globe's investigative team like I am now. In the end, I hit a dead end, and I couldn't get to the truth. But I never forgot the expression on his face and those green certified mail receipts. About a decade later, I heard that man's name on the radio. He'd been released from prison after a judge threw out his conviction. Most of you know the man's name, Darrell Jones. Darrell served 32 years in prison before winning a new trial and ultimately an acquittal. Darrell found people who listened to his story. They included his lawyers, but also a few dogged reporters. Retired WBR reporter Bruce Gellerman did important work on Darrell's case. So did Jennifer McKim of the New England Center for Investigative Reporting. I do believe that journalism has made strides in the past decade. Reporters are more skeptical of law enforcement. We are less likely to rely solely on police reports or motions filed by prosecutors. We've gotten better, but we're far from perfect. I think more journalists need to see what wrongful convictions look like up close, because there's nothing more powerful than sitting in court and watching a wrongfully convicted person finally walk free. It is a singular moment when justice finally triumphs. Investigative journalism can help. The work takes time and resources, and we need more people doing it. But there's another component: trust. In telling the stories of wrongful convictions, journalists need to regain the trust from people who've often been wronged for decades. Earning back someone's trust is no easy task, but it's crucial. I'll be forever grateful to the exonerees who have trusted me to tell small parts of their stories. Each person who talked to me helped me understand a little more, and hopefully that offered more insight to my readers about what the wrongfully convicted endure. Thank you for trusting me, and thank you very much for this honor.
So congratulations, Andrew, on this tremendous recognition. We look forward to your continuing impact. Could all the wrongfully convicted people in the room or their loved ones representing someone who could not be here tonight come up on the stage for a group photograph? You are the largest gathering of wrongfully convicted people in Massachusetts.